Hello and welcome to Nordnet. Constantin Baack, the CEO of MPC Container Ships, joins us in today's session. MPC Container Ships is a market-leading container ship company specializing in serving intra-regional trade lanes, owning and operating one of the largest feeder fleets globally. My name is Roger Berntsen. Before we move on, it's important for you to know that this session shall not be considered as investment advice. Our goal is to learn more about MPC Container Ships as a company and, of course, its underlying industry. So, Constantin, nice to have you back here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Roger. Looking forward to our discussion today.
Yeah, and you have your Q2 numbers are out, and they were quite strong despite significant macroeconomic headwinds. But my question is, did you meet your own expectation for the quarter?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, we are very happy to have reported another strong quarter for MPCC. We have significantly improved our operating revenues and EBITDA compared to Q2 last year. And the first 6 months of 2022 have proven the value proposition of MPCC in a way. And it also proves that our business model has a solid foundation with sustainable earnings. So we're happy that despite, and you mentioned that just now, despite the increased geopolitical and macroeconomic uncertainties, we have yet declared another increase in recurring dividends for the second quarter of 2022. And year to date, MPCC has declared dividends of more than 3.5 billion NOK and more than $350 million. So that emphasizes, or that shows our emphasis on committing to returning capital to investors at this time of the market. In addition, and furthermore, we have increased also our 2022 guidance, which is very positive, both in terms of revenue and EBITDA. So we are now in the range of 570 to 585 million in revenues and 470 to 490 million in EBITDA for the year. So overall, we are very satisfied with the quarter.
Of course, we will come back to the distributing capabilities of your company later in the session. But you're a market-leading ship company with you have very strong financial, mostly due to favorable markets. I guess you as the CEO, you have to be long-term successful within your industry. You have to master the cycles, because the cycles, the top and the bottom of the shipping cycles can be very fluctuating within a short time frame. So what are your secrets when you come to capital allocation strategy during market cycles?
Indeed, capital allocation is, especially in a capital-intensive industry like shipping, is key, and we continue to follow what we think is a very clear and rational capital allocation principle or set of principles, and adapting capital allocation priorities over time, always considering where you are in the market, is certainly a key ingredient for a long-term success. So I guess next to a good understanding of the market and underlying drivers, it requires discipline and certainly execution capabilities, all of which are, in my view, skills that as I firmly believe, MPCC has shown over the years. And at this time, the emphasis is on returning capital to investors, as evidenced by our high dividend yield. So at the same time of prioritizing dividends, we will maintain a strong balance sheet, which is also critical in a good and in a rather low market. Low leverage, high flexibility, a high number of unencumbered vessels, providing us with the opportunity to act when opportune or when necessary. And on the portfolio side, and I think also the last quarter is a testament to it. I mean, we look at possibly offloading some ships if it makes sense. Always looking at, is it accretive on the dividends and on the earnings, but also to selectively add to the fleet renewal program. But again, in the high market, very selectively. So I think these are key ingredients for as far as our capital allocation priority, strategy, and appetite going forward is concerned.
Yeah, and yeah, of course, I agree. You have shown great skills the last quarter. So Let's talk focus more about the short-term outlook, because mid-term outlook for regional trades is quite healthy, both if you see on the fleet growth side of it, and there's a strong trade growth as well. But short-term, what are your take on the current market environment?
Well, the overall macroeconomic and geopolitical situation is obviously not easy, and obviously also difficult to read, as it certainly is characterized by uncertainty, which in turn affects capital market sentiment and also share prices globally. So I think this is a global phenomenon linked to the macroeconomic and geopolitical situation. Having said that, we are presently still, just to talk a few numbers, we're presently still in a historically strong container market, both in terms of, it's actually across the board, both in terms of freight market and charter market, where obviously we have seen a slight decrease in freight rates and also charter rates, but it's still at elevated levels. Our customers, the liner companies, have a historically strong earnings. They on a quarterly basis, single-digit billions in profit that they accumulate. So pretty much all of our, let's say, 10, 15 top customers have basically no net debt. They have net cash. So very strong industry at the moment. And when it comes to the charter market, which is obviously particularly relevant for us and for our revenues and earnings, that market has also taken a bit of a breather. However, our segment remains robust at elevated levels. So we have seen slightly shorter charter periods, but rates are still very high. And therefore, we do not expect the market to drop significantly anytime soon. We see still congestions all over the place, to a lesser extent on the West Coast US, where we have seen it over the last quarters very high, but also in Europe, East Coast US, and also in Asia. So I think overall, I expect the market to soften somewhat, but that is actually not necessarily a bad thing. I think at some point it had to come, but I don't expect the market to go back to anywhere near pre-COVID levels. I think it will remain elevated, especially in light of the limited availability of ships. So overall, I'm still positive also in the short term as far as the container market is concerned.
Yeah. So if we can basically take it down to the recession fears. So the macroeconomic headwinds, that's basically everybody is facing today. That's probably something you as well face short term.
Absolutely, and that is obviously, it will have an effect on demand potentially. Yet, if you look at our business model, we already have a very solid backlog, and I don't think that will be an overall game changer. It might lead to a softening in the market, that, as I said, but I don't expect that to have severe, let's say, long-term consequences. And a bit of a slowdown in the short term is nothing that has a significant effect on our business, given our backlog.
So my next question, it's about ESG. So it's a little bit of a tempo shift in the Q&A session. But what's your commitment to ESG? I guess it's very important to have your plausible ESG value proposition. What's yours?
Well, first of all, MPCC, we are fully committed to ESG. Well, I guess that is a fairly general statement. That is probably something that everyone says. So let's be a bit more concrete and specific. We actually focus on all three letters, the E, the S, and the G, and have defined clear goals and measures as set out in our annual ESG report, which, by the way, we already issue since 2019. So we have not just started with it, we have continued to build on our ESG strategy. And that is based on the Sustainability Development Goals of the United Nations and a detailed materiality assessment for our very own business model. So as a result, we have identified around 50 individual measures across the E, the S, and the G, and they are all depicted in our ESG report. So, and in addition to the ESG value, let's say, proposition, it is aligned with also our strategic goals. Next to the 50 ESG measures, we have also identified two key strategic goals, which are linked to our very business model, and that is emissions, meaning efficiency measures when it comes to our fleet, fuels, and also green new buildings. And I'm sure we'll touch on that later on. We have just done a transaction in that respect, so we're also acting accordingly. And the crews, very critical for our success and very critical in general. And there we focus on safety culture on board and also crew well-being as two key measures. So now measuring a commitment to ESG is obviously not an easy task. The official ESG 100 rating from the Oslo Børs will be released, I think, in the next week. We believe that, given our efforts and our commitment, we will, be very positively perceived in or recognized in that ranking, in particular among shipping peers. So we are actually excited to see that come out, and we believe that that is an, let's say, external assessment of our efforts that is very important for us as well. And lastly, but certainly not less important, is what I alluded to earlier: is the commitment to do things and to actually act accordingly, right? Act according to a certain ESG philosophy and strategy. And we have proven that by ordering, together with partners NCL and Elcam, to carbon neutral 1,300 TEU container ships. That actually, is a fleet renewal for us. It will help decarbonizing the industry. And it demonstrates that one can actually meet ambitious environmental goals if one partners up with like-minded partners, and that's still at an economically very viable and attractive path. So I think that puts together our view on ESG, and it shows you that we're not just talking about it; we're also acting accordingly.
I have a couple of questions left. One is all about dividends. And basically today, when the rates are going, or the interest rates are going higher, cash is becoming more important. You have, for the last 3 quarters, I think you said it in the beginning, you have distributed around 3.5 billion NOK to shareholders. That's equaling the 7.77 kroner per share. But going forward, what can shareholders expect?
Well, indeed, following the implementation of our distribution policy earlier this year, we have made significant dividend payments year to date. And you mentioned the numbers just now. I mean, so the question is, what can shareholders expect going forward? So what they can expect based on our high earnings visibility, which goes well into 2024, and a strong EBITDA backlog of around 1.4 billion, we will continue to place a clear emphasis on returning capital investors on a quarterly basis. That is definitely a key priority and what investors can expect. At the same time, in terms of capital allocation, and given our strong backlog, we are in a comfortable situation that we can not only focus on dividends, we will also continue to deleverage the company financially. We already have a industry low leverage, but we will continue to reduce that further by down payments. And lastly, and very importantly, we are also able and willing to look at transactions as long as they are DPS and EPS accretive. What does that mean? So they will not affect our dividend capacity in the short term, but rather enhance our dividend potential in the years ahead. And those we will execute selectively. And the emphasis is on selectively. So in this market environment, clear priority on dividends. And I think investors can expect us to keep the track and continue to pay out significant amounts to shareholders in the quarters ahead.
Yeah. And finally, what will be your top priorities for the next couple of quarters? I guess you already touched up on it, but can you repeat?
Sure. To summarize that, and as I said, focus is on execution of our distribution policy. We will continue to walk the talk as we've done the last few quarters. We will be, as I said, selectively carrying out portfolio measures. That includes potentially also some further vessel sales and chartering out of vessels. Fleet renewal will also be on the agenda, of course, But there we, again, given that we are in a high market environment, we will rather be selective. We have deployed a lot of capital in 2017 and 2018. As you know, there we felt the market was low and it was time to deploy capital. Now it is time to return capital to shareholders and be very clear in what we do with our capital, also in the communication to the market, but also in terms of strategically carrying out certain measures. And lastly, obviously, we will continue to participate in the green transition. We believe it is important for all participants in the market to have that high on their agenda, obviously always balancing risks and rewards, as we have done in the past and have shown from the last transactions that we've done. So overall, I would say based on strong earnings prospects and EBITDA backlog, we will continue to pay out significant dividends, but do not shy away from looking at transactions if they make sense.
Yeah, very good. Okay, Constantin, thank you for your time and your insights. We will keep in touch. And to everybody else, hopefully we will have Constantin back in a quarter. So, goodbye.
Thanks, Roger. Take care. Bye-bye.